Inflation cooling off. What does it mean for the Bank of Canada's next move 1 week from today? This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
The answers you need
from the people in the know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
The annual inflation rate is back down to well below the 2% level that is preferred by the Bank of Canada. And the next decision on interest rates is a week from today, next Wednesday. Will it be a 50 basis point cut or a more modest 25? Pedro Antunes is the chief economist at the Conference Board of Canada. Thanks for joining us.
It's always a pleasure, Rob.
Well, first of all, let's start with that latest reading on inflation. It came in yesterday at 1.6%. That was lower than most economists had been expected. What did you think of that number?
Yeah, definitely. It was lower. I think the consensus was around 1.8. It's always hard to call the kind of monthly numbers. We're looking at the information we do have. We knew that, for instance, gasoline prices were going to take a good chunk out of inflation this month, as they did last month as well. When I say this month, I mean the month of September. But it was, I think in general, we just saw softer prices overall that helped get the top line number down well below that 2% margin, 1.6%. This is really great news for households because, of course, this is what is affecting our purchasing power, really essentially our ability to purchase goods and services, and the top line number is really having an impact, a positive impact here.
Okay. So what do you think it means for the Bank of Canada next week? 25 or 50? What's your call?
Well, we're actually in the forecast. When we pulled that together was before we had this inflation announcement we just got this week. We were calling for essentially two more cuts of 25 basis points next week and then again in December. It's very possible that the bank sees this as a really good news story and that they reduce by more, especially as we're starting to see more, consensus from the market, the expectation from the market that we may in fact get a 50 basis point cut next week. So, I think it's this good news in general. I think we're heading in the right direction here at easing on the brake pedal, as we say. In other words, interest rates coming down and helping to soften that load that many households continue to bear.
Okay. So what would be the case for, say, 25 instead of 50?
Well, that's a good point. I think there's still things that are going to concern the central bankers when you kind of look at the tea leaves here in terms of all the metrics. In the last jobs reading, we actually saw fairly good recovery in employment. We'd had 3 or 4 months of really flat employment in Canada, and then in the last month, it ticked up quite strongly. About 40,000 jobs were created in the private sector. So that was good news. Good news in the sense that, the labor market is holding up and, perhaps that the economy isn't quite as weak as we might expect. So no need to take the foot off the brake as quickly. The other piece, I think that's, I think an ongoing concern for the central bankers is wage inflation. And in that same report, on the labor force survey, on employment and the unemployment rate, in that same report, we saw that wage growth continues to be uncomfortably high, certainly not aligned with a 2% inflation target. Wage growth has been, essentially running at between 4 and 5%, sometimes even over 5%. In the latest reading, it was at 4.6%. I think in some respects, this is a lot of, essentially wages catching up with high inflation, but it's still not settling in at a level that's, going to provide a lot of comfort to the central bank.
Right. And you still see a lot of labor disruptions. The Air Canada pilots just signed a deal with a 40% raise over a number of years. So there's a dock workers' labor disruption in Montreal right now. So there's some big issues on the labor front, right, Pedro?
Well, I think it's still a labor market that, we have seen the unemployment rate tick up quite substantially over the last year. mostly because we've seen a lot of growth in supply of non-permanent residents coming into the labor force, filling those job vacancies. But when you look at the trades, the skilled trades, skilled workers, I think we're still in general seeing a tight labor market. A lot of the unemployment has been affecting kind of the youth more so than perhaps older cohorts, more experienced cohorts. So yeah, I think there's still labor has some clout here. There's no doubt about it. And of course, labor is really trying to catch up on lost purchasing power that very strong inflation numbers have brought them over the last couple of years. So in a way, if that's what it is, if we're going to see, essentially wages catching up to inflation and then essentially wages settling in at something that's more in line with that 2% inflation target. When I say more in line, typically wages would grow, 0.5, 0.7 percentage points above inflation. So 2.5, 2.7%, 4.6 is just not tenable. So we need to see that balancing out, really.
Okay. So we're coming down to the, the final two decisions of the year. There's the rate decision next week, and then there's one on December 11th. Would you expect a rate cut at both of those?
Yeah, I think so. I think the bank, again, if we get the 25 basis points, I think likely we're going to see 25 basis points declines. If we get a 50 basis point decline next week, then perhaps it will depend more so on what other indicators come out between now and then. The inflation numbers will have another employment survey out. And, unless something turns there, the bank might hold off. But I think the bank is on this careful path of, essentially easing interest rates back to what they consider a neutral rate. So we think that by the middle of next year, we'll be around that rate of 2.5, maybe 2.75 percentage points. So not back down to where we were during the pandemic or pre-pandemic even, but, we still got a good ways to go for some relief here for households and businesses.
Okay, great to hear from you. Thank you for your time today.
You're welcome.
Always a pleasure. From Pedro Antunes, he is the chief economist at the Conference Board of Canada. Again, the rate announcement from the Bank of Canada is next Wednesday, the 23rd of October. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
Once again, the province of Alberta is ready to do battle with the Liberals in Ottawa. This time, the fight is over an emissions cap for the province's oil and gas sector. The Alberta government, led by Premier Danielle Smith, is launching a $7 million advertising campaign, saying the cap will stifle economic growth and lead to higher costs for all Canadians. At a news briefing, the Premier and three of her cabinet ministers said the policies from the Liberals in Ottawa are short-sighted and reckless.
This fall, the federal government plans to table regulations that would set mandatory targets with irresponsible timeframes for upstream oil and gas and liquefied natural gas facilities. Ottawa says they're working to cut emissions, but we all know that's what they're really doing is cutting production of oil and gas. And this, by extension, will cut jobs and revenues across the country. And that should concern every Canadian. Alberta's oil and gas industry is a huge part of Canada's economy. It provides a stable energy supply for Canadians and also for people who live in countries and import our oil and gas products. It provides Canadian families with tens of thousands of direct and indirect jobs, as well as billions of dollars in federal revenues that pay for important programs, services, and infrastructure that Canadians rely on.
Part of the ad campaign includes a new website, scrapthecap.ca, and it includes ads on the front pages of some newspapers. Some people on social media took notice yesterday, for example, when the Halifax Chronicle Herald ran such an ad on its front page. The newspaper chain that once owned the Halifax Chronicle Herald was just taken over by Post Media in an insolvency sale. The ad on the front page of that newspaper warned that the emissions cap would see Canadians pay more for groceries and other essentials. Meantime, at scrapthecap.ca, Canadians are warned that the cap would mean the loss of 150,000 jobs, $19 billion in lost wages, and $1 trillion in lost economic activity. And it encourages people to sign a petition that would be sent to their MP. Speaking earlier this summer about this emissions cap on the oil and gas sector, the federal environment minister, Steven Guilbeault, suggested Alberta take a wait-and-see approach. Wait and see what the government is planning, saying any new regulations were just draft regulations.
They haven't even seen draft regulations. So, and all we're doing with the oil and gas emissions cap is taking companies at their word. They said they wanted to be carbon neutral by 2050, and what we're doing with these regs is we ensure that no one waits until 2048 to start putting in place the measures that are necessary to be carbon neutral by 2050.
So you still don't believe that it is an emissions cap, not a production cap?
We wouldn't be able to do that. I mean, we don't have jurisdiction over the use of natural resources by provinces and territories.
At an event back in December where various Liberal cabinet ministers were in Ottawa outlining how they see this emissions cap working, they dismissed any concerns raised by the Premier of Alberta. This was Alberta Liberal MP Randy Boissonnault.
The Premier's wrong. This is about a cap on pollution and emissions, not a cap on production. Production levels are predicted to go up. We are going to see an increased number of drilling in 24. That's already on the books. Canada has what the world wants. The world changed after Russia invaded Ukraine. The world needs more Canadian energy. And I can tell you what we're trying to do with the most innovative sector in this country, which is the oil and gas sector, which is get to the greenest barrel of oil on the planet. Because the greenest barrel of oil on the planet is the one that the world's going to want first and most. And the smartest people in the world in this are Canadian and Albertan engineers and technicians and workers. And this is about saying to the world, think about it, we're the first heavy producer of oil and gas that's putting an emissions cap in place. That is something we committed to. The Prime Minister committed to having this framework released before Christmas, before the end of the year. We're doing that. And so the Premier's off base. This is about reducing emissions, not putting a cap on production.
But whatever assurances are coming from Liberals in Ottawa, they are falling on deaf ears in the Premier's office. This was Premier Danielle Smith yesterday.
The simple and undisputed fact is this: Alberta is already a global leader in responsible energy production and emissions reduction. And our energy industry is leading the way when it comes to developing technologies that reduce emissions and the size of our environmental footprint. And this includes investing in technologies such as carbon capture, utilization, and storage, which will position us as a leader in clean tech and help industries cut emissions while also growing the economy. Engineering and innovation will help solve the emissions challenge. Instead, the federal government plans to use a sledgehammer to kill a fly. And today, all I'm asking is for Canadians to join us, to write their MPs, to raise their voices, and to tell them that enough is enough, to scrap the cap.
This latest spat with Ottawa over an oil and gas emissions cap comes as Danielle Smith faces a leadership review from members of the United Conservative Party scheduled for early next month. Alberta's new NDP leader, Naheed Nenshi, accused Premier Smith in a statement of spending taxpayers' dollars to try and influence the next federal election. The $7 million ad campaign by the Alberta government will see it run television ads in newspapers, ads on social media platforms. They'll be seen in Alberta, BC, Ontario, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia, and run until the end of November. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know, and this is News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
Here alongside David Smith on a Wednesday. And we have some developing news in the nation's capital. Now, the House of Commons is not sitting this week. It is the Thanksgiving break away from Parliament for MPs. However, the OG Commission is ongoing. That is the commission that is investigating foreign interference in the last two Canadian elections. And the star of the show is the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He is being questioned today, and there's a kind of a backdrop for all of this. The latest allegations revealed on Thanksgiving Monday by the RCMP about agents in the government of India being linked with organized crime groups in Canada to target Canadian citizens for murder, extortion, and other crimes. So the Prime Minister, within the last half hour or so, testified that he has the names of conservative parliamentarians who are involved in foreign interference. Now, a parliamentarian could be an MP, could be a senator. But he said he has instructed CSIS to warn the leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, in order to protect the Conservative Party's integrity. And that Poilievre's decision not to go through a security screening means that no one in the Conservative Party is in any position to act on the intelligence that Mr. Trudeau has seen, or to challenge the accuracy of the information that Mr. Trudeau says that he has seen. So this was within the last half hour or so, again, at the Foreign Interference Commission, the Hogue Commission, the Prime Minister being questioned here. Let's listen.
Because I am Prime Minister and privy to all these informations, I have the names of a number of parliamentarians, former parliamentarians and or candidates in the Conservative Party of Canada who are engaged or at high risk of, or for whom there is clear intelligence around foreign interference. And I have directed CSIS and others to try and inform the Conservative Party leader to be warned and armed to be able to make decisions that protect the integrity of that party, of its members, from attempts at foreign activities around foreign interference. And the decision by the leader of the Conservative Party to not get those classified briefings means that nobody in his party, not him, and nobody in a position of power knows the names of these individuals and can take appropriate action. It also means nobody's there to stand up for those individuals if the intelligence is shoddy or incomplete or just allegations from a single source. And that is something that as you've seen, we are ready to question intelligence when it comes towards the Liberal Party members, because we need to make sure if you're going to end someone's career, you're doing it in a responsible way. The decision of the leader of the Conservative Party to not receive the necessary clearance to get those names and protect the integrity of his party is bewildering to me and entirely lacks common sense.
Okay. Mr. Poilievre has said he does not want to go through this process and read these reports because he would be effectively muzzled from commenting on them. That's what he has said, but can he continue to say that after these explosive allegations from the Prime Minister at the Foreign Interference Inquiry today? We will discuss this coming up on our Newsday panel right after the news on News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio, the Newsday panel.
Okay, our gang's all here. It's time for the Newsday panel featuring Jordan Paquette, Senior Consultant at Blue Sky Strategy Group. Welcome back, Jordan. Good to hear from you.
Thanks, Rob. Good to be here.
And Neil Brody is here, longtime Conservative strategist. Hello, Neil.
Good afternoon, Rob. Good afternoon, Jordan.
Great to hear from you. So why don't we start with the newest news right out of the gate. The Prime Minister Trudeau is testifying today at the public inquiry into foreign interference and has revealed that he has learned that several current and former Conservative parliamentarians are either engaged in foreign interference or at a high risk of being targeted by a foreign government. And he went after Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, for refusing to get a security clearance and receiving briefings to learn more about this. So again, this is a developing news story that we're covering today. This is what the Prime Minister said at the inquiry today.
Because I am Prime Minister and privy to all these informations, I have the names of a number of parliamentarians, former parliamentarians and or candidates in the Conservative Party of Canada who are engaged or at high risk of, or for whom there is clear intelligence around foreign interference. And I have directed CSIS and others to try and inform the Conservative Party leader to be warned and armed to be able to make decisions that protect the integrity of that party, of its members, from attempts at activities around foreign interference. And the decision by the leader of the Conservative Party to not get those classified briefings means that nobody in his party, not him, and nobody in a position of power knows the names of these individuals and can take appropriate action. It also means nobody's there to stand up for those individuals if the intelligence is shoddy or incomplete or just allegations from a single source. And that is something that as you've seen, we are ready to question intelligence when it comes towards the Liberal Party members, because we need to make sure if you're going to end someone's career, you're doing it in a responsible way. The decision of the leader of the Conservative Party to not receive the necessary clearance to get those names and protect the integrity of his party is bewildering to me and entirely lacks common sense.
Okay, Prime Minister Trudeau within the hour saying he has information that several current and former Conservative parliamentarians are either engaged in foreign interference or at risk of being targeted by a foreign government. What's your reaction to what you just heard, Neil Brody?
Well, two things off the top, Rob. There's nothing, it's fantastic that Mr. Trudeau has brought this to light. I don't know if that was the proper place or time to do it. Others will opine on that. But let's understand the substance of what Mr. Trudeau said. There is nothing that prevents Mr. Trudeau, the Prime Minister himself, directing CSIS or whoever holds this information to go talk to Mr. Poilievre, regardless of Mr. Poilievre's security clearance. That's a big red herring that's been put forward by people talking around this commission since it began. The Prime Minister has it solely within his authority to direct CSIS to go talk to Mr. Poilievre if this is a real serious matter. Secondly, I would say that this is a fantastic, deflection from the Liberal government's dereliction of duty on this file for the last 10 years. We've heard throughout the testimony of this commission, before the summer, after the summer, that ministers and their staff, all we hear is how they didn't know about anything that was going on until they read about it in the newspaper. And I can tell you that could be stretching the truth on their. Either they're stretching the truth on their part, or they are derelict in their duty to do their jobs as parliamentarians, ministers, and staffers. I worked in the Harper government in the Public Safety Minister's office. The Public Safety Minister has in his portfolio CSIS and the RCMP, and I can tell you that during the Harper years, our office received an update daily from those two services on what was going on within their purview. And this idea that somehow those two services would hide from the government that there was real meaningful intelligence on foreign interference, either at the party level, at the riding level, or interference going on between states and MPs themselves. It stretches the ability of my mind to wrap my head around it. So those two things immediately come to mind. If this is real and serious, Mr. Trudeau can effect a briefing for Mr. Poilievre within the hour, if he so chooses. And secondly, I believe it's, in addition to that, it's just a deflection of the Liberal government away from their own incompetence in this file.
Okay, interesting. Jordan Pickett, what do you think?
I think I'm a little uncomfortable with how the Prime Minister appears to be using this inquiry and his intelligence agencies for political purposes now. I mean, his back was up against the wall with a new backbench MP coming in against him yesterday. So I mean, this is a great channel change from today. The Conservative Party has been calling for the release of names, if they were in some reports since last spring. To Neil's point, if the Prime Minister wanted this issue, wanted to treat it seriously, he could arrange a briefing for the Leader of the Opposition to do this, but it was easier for the Prime Minister to go out today and cryptically say he has a list of names of Conservative MPs who could be at risk of foreign interference. So now paints the entire caucus and indeed all of Parliament under this cloud of suspicion. So I think Canadians should be quite cautious of this tactic. And really look suspiciously about what could be happening here. I mean, and then for the Prime Minister to then go on in that audio you just played, Rob, saying, well, some of this evidence could be shoddy, incomplete. There could be questions about it. I don't think it's doing a service to Parliament for the Prime Minister to go on in this forum and speak like this, especially when he's admitted that he hasn't read all of the intelligence and all the memos that went up to his own office.
Okay, we'll be right back and talk a little bit more about this and other happenings with Jordan Pickett, Senior Consultant at Blue Sky Strategy Group. Neil Brody, longtime Conservative strategist, spent some time in the Harper PMO. I'm Rob Snow, Newsday panel here on News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
It's our Newsday panel. Jordan Pickett is here from Blue Sky Strategy Group. So is Neil Brody, longtime Conservative strategist. So given this testimony today from the Prime Minister at the Foreign Interference Inquiry, I had the names of a number of parliamentarians, former parliamentarians, candidates of the Conservative Party who are engaged or at high risk of, or for whom there is clear intelligence around foreign interference. In light of that testimony from Mr. Trudeau, given the fact this is going to be all over the news, it's going to be on the national news tonight, it'll be on all the papers tomorrow. How should the Conservatives respond? What should Pierre Poilievre say in light of this? What would you say, Jordan?
Well, I think what they've been saying all along is, okay, tell us. They've been saying this since last spring. If you have intelligence that you want to share, then by all means do it. They've been trying to make this sideshow and side issue of whether or not he should get security clearance. We can get this proper briefing. I think it's just all a distraction. To Neil's point in the previous segment, the Prime Minister can direct a briefing on this and provide the names of the Conservative Party. But instead, I think the Prime Minister, some may call it a smart political move, what he's doing here, but I think it's going down a little bit of a dangerous path for the Prime Minister to be using this forum in this manner.
Okay. What do you think the Conservative side should say here, Neil Brody?
Well, I mean, Jordan's put forward some smart ideas there. Mr. Poilievre can simply just ask the Prime Minister to meet in the next couple of days to share that information in a collegial way. And if Mr. Trudeau decides not to do that, Mr. Poilievre can say, well, we've tried to play the game, and Mr. Trudeau is playing politics, and as such, it's incumbent upon if this is a failing, it's a failing of Mr. Trudeau, it's not a failing of Mr. Poilievre's, and then Mr. Poilievre can simply switch to some of the troubles that the Liberal government finds itself in, as Jordan said. a second Liberal MP has come out in the last 24 hours, Sean Casey, I think it was, saying that the Prime Minister should step down to join the message that Wayne Long put forward a couple of months ago that he should step down. Mr. Poilievre can pivot quite quickly to outline to Canadians all of the many failings of the Liberal government on access tax, build the homes, all that sort of stuff, plus all of the internal problems that they're having too. But Mr. Poilievre can go out in the next hour or two and say, if you have names, I need to know, and if you don't choose not to tell me, then it's your political game, not my political game that's being played here.
Okay. So just so I'm understanding, and I am thinking back to when Elizabeth May, for example, went through this clearance business and then did a news conference and said how relieved she was. You remember that, right? Oh, I'm so relieved. There's nothing to see here. Maybe some smoke, but not much fire. And Jagmeet Singh went through the exact same process, read the exact same report, and came out and said how alarmed he was, right? You remember that. And Mr. Poilievre has said, I don't want to go through this dog and pony show because if I read this, I'm sworn to secrecy. I'm not allowed to comment on it. And even when reporters, members of the press gallery, what have you, were asking Mr. Singh and Ms. May about it, they couldn't reveal any of the details that were actually in the original report from NSICOP. So I do wonder what Mr. Poilievre should do in light of this. Should he acquiesce and say, well, okay, I'll go through the clearance, I'll read the NSICOP report? Or should he do what Neil has suggested and say to the Prime Minister, okay, if you have the names, give me the names? And you're saying that's what he should do. Is that what you think, Jordan, as well?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I mean, they've been calling, they've been asking for the names since the spring. So if the Prime Minister has this, please release it. I think there's another list of names that the Prime Minister would rather have, and that's those co-conspirators that have signed on to this letter, right. Apparently asking for them to leave. I think and so to me, this is just a big distraction from that
distraction.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
Let's also understand that Ms. May and Mr. Singh are making a conscious decision not to release the names that they may have found in these reports. And while it's quote unquote against the law to reveal these names, I mean, what's the government going to do? Like, really, what is the government going to do if Ms. May stands up in the House of Commons and says, "I read a secret report and it names person A, person B, and person C"? Are the RCMP actually going to swoop in, throw cuffs on Elizabeth May, toss her in the back of a cruiser, and take her down to an RCMP
She'd actually enjoy that, knowing Elizabeth May.
Maybe she would, but like, what's the practical ramifications of outing these names? If are you actually going to get prosecuted? Are you actually going to get arrested and thrown in jail? Maybe you get censured in the House of Commons for doing something you shouldn't have. Having a parliamentarian do this is different than having Jordan or I do it. If Jordan or I do it, we get in real trouble. But in practical terms, Mr. Singh could go out tomorrow morning and release everything that he knows that he received in these briefings, and nothing is really going to happen to him. Is Mr. Trudeau going to stand up in the House of Commons and say, you're a criminal, Mr. Singh, because you revealed top secret stuff in the House of Commons? It boggles my mind that parliamentarians are playing this game that Mr. Trudeau wants them to play.
All right, we will be back and we will talk about that Liberal revolt against Mr. Trudeau, such as it is today. I'm Rob Snow. It's our Newsday panel here on News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
Neil Brody with us for our Newsday panel today. Well, what do you think, Jordan, are the chances of success for those Liberal MPs who would like to see Justin Trudeau step down as the leader of the Liberal Party?
Well, I think they're getting organized. I think they're getting very organized. You saw the leak going into the weekend, made all the national news. So heading into that, heading into the constituency week, and then you have Sean Casey, MP for Charlottetown, coming out publicly saying he believes the Prime Minister should go. There's going to be more. I would expect it to kind of trickle out this week. I think they're a little more organized this time around. Now the Liberals don't have the Reform Act provisions, so they can't instantly sort of trigger a vote. But with enough pressure, the Prime Minister is going to realize that he doesn't have a tenable path forward, and he's either going to have these MPs come and openly challenge him on a vote, or he's going to have to step down. But right now, obviously, the caucus is in complete disarray.
Okay, Neil, what odds do you give this of success? This revolt in the Liberal caucus?
Well, today I give it little to none. If the numbers stay low and if the names stay anonymous. I'm reminded of nature movies we used to see in elementary school where all the penguins are standing on the edge of the ice floe and the group pushes a couple of people into the water to see if they're going to get eaten by sharks or whatever. Mr. Long went out in June. We haven't really heard much from him since then. Mr. Casey's out today, and there's a few leaks about a letter or a list or something going around right now. To Jordan's point, it seems to be gathering steam, I guess. The Prime Minister hasn't been in Ottawa for, the last week, touring around the country until today when he appeared at the Commission. My odds may change next Wednesday around 2 p.m, which is after the Liberal caucus meets. If there are gigantic leaks out of that caucus meeting, if there are more rumblings about seeing Mr. Trudeau leave before the next election, then I think there's something there. Then the odds obviously go up. Or if a list gets published publicly, then the odds go up. But right now, I just see the Liberal caucus as a bunch of penguins standing on the edge of an ice floe.
Okay. What about that meeting next Wednesday? Wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall there, Jordan?
Oh, absolutely. Or the one last week too, when apparently an Atlantic MP, Cody Boyce, came to the mic and said we're having discussions on the future of this leadership, and then abruptly just left the room. And the Prime Minister and his chief of staff weren't around, and they asked PMO staff
right.
as well. So there's some more organization happening. I think Sean Casey yesterday was just the first. I'm told he's just the first of who's going to be coming out publicly. I don't know the names exactly yet, but I would expect to see more this week.
Very interesting. Always great to hear from both of you. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rob. Have a great week, everyone.
Thanks, Neil.
Conservative strategist Neil Brody spent some time in the Harper PMO. Jordan Piquette from Blue Sky used to work with Rona Ambrose. I'm Rob Snow. The Talkback is coming up right after the news. You're going to talk about generational fairness today. With your help, this is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. 2 hours of debate and discussion on some of the biggest issues of the day. And today's topic, generational fairness. Generational fairness. And here are some questions. Get the conversation going today. Do you think generational fairness is a problem in Canada? And if you do, what can be done to improve the situation? Our number to call, 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. What do you think about this idea that the older generations, like my generation, Generation X, or my parents' generation, the baby boomers, are going to have a better quality of life, a better standard of living than the younger generations coming behind them, like the millennials, or like David's generation, Generation Z? Do you think that's true? First of all, and if you think that's true, what can be done to fix it, to improve the situation? Or do you think it's not true? And if you don't think it's true, what's your reasoning behind that position? What makes you believe that? Gosh, I'd love to jump right into this with you. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. I have been thinking a lot about this topic recently. And of course, so have our politicians in advance of a federal election campaign. I mean, look at the main slogan for the Liberal Party now. What is it? Fairness for every generation. Fairness for every generation. They're pitching that wherever they go, whenever they speak. It's fairness for every generation. You hear even from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Even he's admitting young people feel as though they're not getting ahead. The odds are stacked against them. And for the Conservative opposition, I mean, they're the big beneficiaries of this politically, because all of the polls are saying not only do the Conservatives have a big lead over the Liberals, generally speaking, but also that younger Canadians are telling pollsters that they're the most likely to vote for the Conservatives in the next election. And I, for one, interpret that as they're the ones who are most upset with the status quo. That's the age group, the under 30s, that has the most desire for change, that, they think whatever's happening now, it's not working for them. And I'm telling you, that is a big change since 2015, when Trudeau took the Liberal Party from third to first, and young voters played a big role in helping the Liberals form a majority government back in 2015. But look, let's toss this around. I want to put this to the test. Just how big an issue is this in Canada, in your opinion? This idea that younger generations simply will not enjoy the same quality of life older Canadians enjoyed. How much do you buy into it? If you're in your late 30s, early 40s, 50s, 60s, older than that, what do you make of this idea? Younger Canadians are generation screwed. Because I suspect there are some people who might be inclined to think they're not generation screwed, they're generation spoiled. Because I've heard that before. I used to hear it more often than I do now. But I used to hear things like, younger Canadians have unrealistic expectations. Younger Canadians don't have the same kind of work ethic as previous generations. Younger Canadians aren't willing to make the same kind of sacrifices that other generations made before them. For younger Canadians, they have wants and needs that are simply too extravagant. Now, I've heard that, but do you think there's any truth to it? Participate in the conversation today, 1-833-668-2577. If you have never called before, just tell the call screener, well, that will be David today. You'll speak to David and then me. You're a first-time caller. Just tell me you're a first-time caller. We'll make your call a priority. 1-833-668-2577, and we'll talk about generational fairness. Let's go to Jake in Guelph. Hi, Jake.
Hey, Rob. Okay, so here it is, buddy. 1979. We had an inflationary time that is very reflective of today, and it's just a fluke, I suppose. The same person's in charge, same last name. But you could have said this about our generation in 1979. People were living together, like Three's Company was popular at the time. Yes. But I think it's just something that happens when we have these economic interruptions. I think for young people, they just have to remember the most important thing in life is breathing. If you're breathing, food, clothing, shelter are issues you have to work for. Okay. And somebody one day is going to be in charge. It might as well be you. So pay attention, keep the wheels straight, and don't despair. The sun will come out tomorrow, from any point of view. But, yeah, it's just an economic thing, and it will change. And, lower expectations certainly almost seems like it's forced on us. Reducing the standard of living of Western societies, and also reducing the birth rate of Western societies are things that they're like things that are happening aren't a fluke. It's on purpose. And once they start voting with common sense instead of with their feelings, I think they'll be a lot happier. Thank you.
But Jake, just before you run, do you think that younger generations are going to have the same quality of life that you and I enjoy? Somebody in their 20s right now?
It's not to say that people in our age group are better, don't have problems. I mean, there's lots of people on fixed incomes that are over 60 years old. There's lots of people that are white that aren't privileged. There's lots of people that are having a tough time. I honestly think it's a individual basis. Those who think of the cup as half full rather than half empty, I think will do better. But you got to look at what can you do for yourself and what can you do for the environment you're in. And unfortunately, people don't like talking about politics, but I see politics as the reason why, the society is so screwed. I mean, look at Justin Trudeau's caravan got surrounded yesterday. He brought that here.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jake. Good to hear from you. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Let's talk about generational fairness. What do you think about this idea? The older generations, they're going to have a better quality of life than the younger generations coming from behind them. Okay? You think it's true? If you think it's true, what can be done to improve the situation? If you don't think it's true, why do you think that? 1-833-668-2577 as we get started on another Talkback here on a Wednesday on News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Generational fairness is what we're talking about today. What do you think about this idea that older generations will have a better quality of life, a higher standard of living than the younger generations coming behind them? Do you think it's true? If it's true, what can be done to fix it? If you don't think it's true, why do you think that? 1-833-668-2577, Dartmouth. Hi there, Rick. Hello, Rick. Are you with me?
You there?
I'm right here. Rick, go ahead.
Oh, it's a function of your age.
Okay.
Obviously. When I was a younger person, I'm like 72 now, but when I was a younger person, the fairness part of it wasn't really important to me. It was just trying to work so that I could, make a living. I was a professional musician, and to your point earlier regarding how governments have kind of screwed things up, back when I was playing, and it's what I did for a living for 40 years, the number of clubs, for instance, if you played in bars, was limited, so the best musicians got to play in the clubs. But then the government just kind of opened it up, and if you had a pulse, you could open a club. And as they opened up, the number of people that went to any one particular club that could afford entertainment diminished. So now I would not recommend anybody being a musician for that reason, that it's so hard to get work because there are so many musicians, so many clubs. So, if you're a young person now, you have to focus on something, whether, be a great job or whatever. But, I mean, back in the day, and I hate saying it back in the day, in the 70s, for instance, inflation was screaming. The oil embargo caused oil to go from $25 a barrel to $150 a barrel, and the climate gurus were all predicting an ice age, and we all kind of went, okay, well, this sounds really bad. But after 10 years, we realized it really wasn't. But the only thing you can do really is, in my view, is save your money. And in terms of the fairness, to me, economic fairness, it sounds like equity to me. It sounds like you're taking money from people who already have it. Give you an example, the capital gains tax. So, I'm obviously, in the latter part of it, but, we're not hurting here, but, people are hurting, I guess. But generational fairness, in my view, is a ridiculous concept.
Ridiculous concept. Okay, very interesting, Rick. Thank you. Good to hear from you. From Rick to Rob in Cambridge. Rob, thanks for calling, Rob. Go ahead. What's your opinion here, Rob?
Rob,
my opinion would be is the younger generation have it rougher than our generation.
How so?
But they do. Well, your rents are so much higher than what we had when we were growing up. Plus, the job market isn't there. Like you go around town and look at your gas stations back then. You know, you could always hire a kid to, hire a young one to come and pump gas and change oil and sweep floors. Now they're selling beer and just cigarettes, and you pump your own gas. You don't even change tires.
Yeah.
Plus, the rents are so higher today, and the jobs that we had aren't there anymore. And the jobs we had back then had pensions to secure us. They're coming to a close because it's running out now where there's not the big pension jobs that we had. And, there's a lot of unfairness, not just generational, but like the younger people have a harder stroke at it than what I believe we had. And they're really depending on not only maybe helping to buy a house from their parents, like from their parents' windfall, but they're living there. They're, because they can't even really consider renting to go out on their own to try to make it on their own if you're going to have a car today. Like years ago, we put up with an old used car that we changed oil in our driveway with, and you can't do that today. So there's a lot of unfairness.
Yeah. Okay.
But I believe,
so you think in your day, if it was easier to get a job, easier to get a good job that would pay you benefits, help you secure a pension in your retirement, and your dollar went further with things like shelter costs, for example, right?
Absolutely. Like I was in the automotive part around in KW area, and like your job, you were 2 or 3 times higher than minimum wage, and you could quit your job at 10 a.m., go for lunch, have a few beers, and you could get another job at 1 o'clock, and it paid well. And and like today, now you need a university degree to almost flip burgers or serve coffee at Tim Hortons. Like it's a total different way, and like they're at minimum wage. Nobody back in our day could have lived on minimum wage, but today you're expecting a young person to do that. And, you have to have 2 or 3 jobs. Back in our day too, mom and dad were home on the weekends and you had a Sunday dinner. How can you do that today with the jobs they're working 7 days a week? And,
And try, if step number one would be to try and afford the dinner, I guess. Rob.
That would be it, and afford to have your kids to have dinner. And it's coming out now where everybody's pressuring about feeding your kids at school because they're not getting a breakfast, or that was stuff that we took for granted as kids. We never thought about that because our parents made sure of it.
Okay, all right.
It's all out there. So
it's tougher now. Okay, interesting. Thank you, Rob. Great to hear from you. Yep, we have lines available there, folks. The wait won't be too long. 1-833-668-2577. As we talk about generational fairness today, and the idea older generations enjoy a better quality of life than the younger generations coming behind them will. Your thoughts on that, please. Is it true? If it's true, what can be done to improve the situation? If it's not true, why do you believe that? 1-833-668-2577. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Do you believe older generations will have a better quality of life than the younger generations coming behind them? Brent in Halifax, what would you say, Brent?
I would say that the younger generation it's as fair today as it's ever been, and probably even somewhat better.
And why would you say that, sir?
Well, there's lots of, for those young people today, like I have 3 kids, 36, 32, and 31. And for those young people today who, have ambition and want to work hard, and their lifestyle is modest, modest living. They can save money, do it, make a budget. I've been lending money to people for 40 years, and those that tend not to have a whole lot are those that maybe their lifestyle is a little excessive at times, or they just simply don't budget.
Okay.
There's lots of jobs. There's no question about that. And there's some decent paying jobs if you have enough ambition to, stay in school. I'm not saying that there's not a lot of people that end up working jobs with minimum wage. However, if they have ambition, you can work and go to school at the same time and increase your level of earnings.
Okay. What about the ideas of precarious employment? It's harder to find a good job, especially a job that, gives you benefits, let alone a pension. And it's harder to save now than ever before because of the sky-high cost of shelter. What about that?
I don't buy that at all.
Don't buy that. Okay.
No, I know the cost of living is higher and rent is much higher.
Yes.
But if they look at themselves and look at themselves in an honest way and do a budget, if their budget if they look at their budget and they spend $700 or $800 a month eating out, going out, like I go to restaurants frequently, and they're constantly, and these are high end restaurants, they're constantly full of young people. And the bills, like if you go to a restaurant, I just came back from Ottawa. If you go to a restaurant, it's easy to spend $250. Young people that are out there spending $250, maybe they can afford it. Maybe they have a better, level of earnings. But I would suggest that a lot of them don't. But if your budget includes $750 or $1,000 going out or drinking or buying weed or what have you, then you have to adjust your budget and save money.
Okay. And if they do that, you believe that, say, a member of the millennial generation or Gen Z, they will enjoy the same quality of life that you enjoy?
I do, because I witness it every day.
You do? Okay. All right. Thank you, Brent. Thank you. Mythbuster, narrative buster, Brent there. Love to hear a counterpoint. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577 as we just get started here on Talkback on Wednesday on News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We've been talking about generational fairness today. The idea that older generations will enjoy a better quality of life, a higher standard of living than the younger generations coming behind them. Gathering your thoughts on that today on the Talk Back with the help of Leonard in Halifax. What's your opinion here, Leonard?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yes, go ahead, Leonard. What do you think of this idea?
Well, I think they're definitely not going to have the same quality of life. And that's partially because of the government. I mean, with the way the government spends our tax money and the way we're taxed, you're in a hole that you're just barely able to see the light at the end of the tunnel as a young person.
Okay. The idea that taxes are too high, the deficits are too big, the national debt is too big, that they're starting sort of in a hole from the day they're born. Is that what you mean, Leonard?
Well, yeah, pretty much. But
okay.
On the other side of the coin, I got to say, young people are expecting jobs that are high end. They're expecting jobs in technology, computing, all this stuff. They don't want to get their hands dirty. And that goes to show you right now, trade jobs are getting tremendous wages because they're the people that want to get their hands dirty. Nobody wants to get their hand dirty. You've got to go out there and earn your money where it is, not just take it, where you think it's going to come from.
Right. Okay. Go where the opportunities are. Is that what you mean, Leonard?
Yeah.
Adapt
pretty
to the workforce that's offering the most opportunity, not necessarily what you may enjoy doing. Is that what you mean?
Exactly. Like my wife and I, we're both of us are retired. But when we grew up, nobody was giving us money. We had to go out, look for jobs, and make ends meet.
Yes.
And we didn't own like boats, and people, the younger generation, they want to have what the Joneses have. Well, we never had what the Joneses have, but right now we're retired and we're keeping an even keel. It's all good.
Okay, an even keel even without a boat. Okay. Leonard, do you think that the younger generations, I don't want to put words in your mouth, do you think they have the same, work ethic as members of your generation or your parents' generation?
I think some of them have the work ethic. But
right.
You just can't pick and choose what the jobs. Okay. Everybody wants the big jobs. Everybody wants the big money jobs, but they're not there.
Okay. All right. Interesting, Leonard. Thank you. Thank you for your call.
You.
Put some blame on the government and some on young people unwilling to adapt, I guess I would say. Chris in Martins Point, Nova Scotia. Chris, hi there.
Hey, Rob.
Good to hear from you again. Thank you. Yeah, it's good for me. Thank you. Well, I've got some car problems, but other than that, they put it up on the hoist to do the snow tires, and all of a sudden you need this, that, and the other thing. So that's what's going on in the background of my life right now. So
yeah, I hear
can
you,
do without
brother.
that, but other than that, life's pretty good. I'm blessed. So thank you.
Well, sounds like you've got gratitude working for you, so you got it beat. As long as you can stay grateful for what you got instead of crying the blues for what you don't have, you'll be okay.
Okay. So what do you think about this idea? Older generations will have a better quality of life than the younger generations coming behind them, that they've got it bad. What do you think?
That's a very convoluted question. It's a topic that, you can dissect till the cows come home. And I think every generation had its fair share of problems and hurdles to overcome. My parents were part of the greatest generation. They went through a depression followed by a world war. They did without a lot of stuff. Baby boomers, I'm a boomer, and I'm 69. I'm still working, so I don't know about this quality of life being better for old people.
Right.
But I think overall, if I was to take it overall, if I was just to stand back and look at it all, socio-economic, political, and everything else, I would not want to be a young person starting out today. I really wouldn't.
Why?
Well, for one thing, okay, let's lay it at the feet of the government. Some of the blame has to go there. I believe in a lot of areas, government has overregulated. You can't, to start a business now, like to be an independent. Like I worked for myself for over 30 years. I started out with no help from the government, no help from anybody. And I worked it into a business that, like I say, I'm still working, so obviously I didn't have a whole lot of money to throw into RSPs and stuff, but it raised a family, and it provided a living for me. Now, to try to do what I did now with all the regulations, rules, and everything else out there governing, not to mention being taxed right to the death, you can't do it. A person couldn't do what I did before, so a lot of doors are closed to young people starting out today. You add into that the fact that geopolitically right now, the world is like they're like hounds baying for the kill. All across this globe, countries are flexing their muscles. Like I can't imagine what it must be like if you're in your 20s or even a teenager and you're thinking, Jesus, am I going to make it to the next decade, or are we going to just immolate here?
Right. Okay.
It's a lot of stress on a young person starting out.
True
Not
enough,
to mention the price of everything, like rent. Somewhere along the line, and nobody seems to be able to take the bull by the horns and find out where in the food chain, when it comes to rent and all this, greed had to have taken over somewhere in order for rents to go to the point they are right now. You can't just point the finger at the landlord. Somewhere down that food chain, somebody's making a dirty pile of money at the expense of people starting out trying to just to find a place to lay your head down at night. So, no, Rob, I would say, boys, I'd say right now, and like I say, there's a lot of different factors to it, but being a young person starting out today, boys, you got a hard.
You
road
don't
ahead.
envy them. Okay.
Well,
All right.
no, because when
Thank
I
you.
was a kid too,
Yeah.
you had
Yeah.
different jobs as a teenager that you could do to earn money, like bagging
Oh,
groceries,
sure.
pumping gas.
You know, the guy mentioned the gas station. I was also thinking this morning as I was getting ready for the show, even the grocery store of my youth and how much that has changed now. You go in and gosh, you're bagging your groceries, you're bringing the cart out, you're returning the cart. All of that used to be done by young people. You know, there used to be a young fellow would bag the groceries. The cashier would check you out. The young fellow would bag the groceries, put it on a trolley out to the crew outside. It went. They put the groceries in your trunk. Nobody does that anymore.
Well,
all those jobs are gone now for those young people, right?
Exactly, Rob. And those were all entry-level jobs as a teenager.
Entry-level jobs. Yeah, sure.
They gave you, they instilled in you while you were still in school a work ethic. Like if you wanted something, your parents said, "Well, go get an after-school job." Well, they were out there. There was lots of them out there. So when you left high school and you entered the workforce, you already had a work ethic because you have already been working before you even left school. That's all gone now. Like you just, self-checkout, like you say, everything's done. Yeah. But no, I don't envy the kids today.
All right. We've got to go. Chris, thank you. Good to hear you again. Thank you from Martins Point, Nova Scotia. We'll go to Cambridge and Alberta and back to Halifax before we're done at the top of the hour. Just hang on the line, everybody, as we talk about generational fairness today on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
As we continue our discussion today about generational fairness, Sean in Cambridge, thanks for waiting there, Sean. Go ahead. What's your opinion here, Sean?
Boy, Cambridge sure gets a lot of representation, doesn't it?
It's a great place.
Yeah. I agree with that previous gentleman. I would not want to be one of today's youth. I'm just thinking in the past,
okay.
A guy could work, get married, have a couple of kids, and he could afford to buy a house. He'd have a pension, benefits, the whole bit. I just think my parents' generation. My father could work and mom could stay at home, and they could, have a house and stuff in a reasonable life. And I'm looking at my younger relatives now. I'm helping them out. They're working ridiculous hours, and if I wasn't helping them, they couldn't afford to live, and they certainly can't afford to buy a house. So I agree. I would not want to be young. The price of everything is ridiculous. Like I said, we've stripped away. We've been in a race to the bottom for so long now. We've been stripping away workers' rights. We've been stripping away pensions, benefits, everything. Like, where are we going? Are we in end-stage capitalism? I'm starting to think so.
End-stage capitalism, okay. Very interesting because, if the first step is to admit you have a problem, right? So you think we have a problem. You think it's true that generational fairness is a problem. Older generations enjoy a better quality of life than younger generations. So what could be done to improve it would be the next question. How do you address the problem?
Yeah,
easier said than done. But workers' rights is interesting.
Yeah,
protections for workers. I was never a big fan, for example, of the gig economy. The Uber style jobs, the skip the dishes stuff, this idea, set your own hours. Yeah, but also what about minimum wages and what about vacation pay and what about workers' compensation and all of these protections that whether you're right wing, left wing, these are important protections, So
these things are not happening in Europe. They're only happening in North America. I mean, think about it.
I don't know.
Why are these things not happening in the European Union? It's only happening here.
I don't know.
To think about.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Sean. Good representation from Cambridge today. Sylvan Lake, Wade in Alberta. Thank you, Wade, for calling.
How you doing, Rob?
I'm good, Wade. Good to hear from you. What do you think, Wade?
I have two children. They're 40 and 37, and now we have some grandchildren. But I'm going to speak as a father, not a mother. When my children were growing up, I used to tell them, when you get out in the work world, your employer will tell you what house you live in, what food you eat, what car you drive, where you're going on vacation, and how long you're going to be gone. And if you want control of any of that, get an education. So when it came time, after they were, getting close to graduation, grade 10 or so, we kept prodding them with what do you want to do with your life? Where are you going to go? You need to keep your marks up, and you need to target the subjects that interest you in things that you may want to do in your life.
Sure.
So they made their choices, and I told them we'd back them up with whatever they decided, and they both decided to go to university, and we took our hard-earned money, and instead of having a boat and a BMW and all that stuff, we paid for both of their universities' educations, rent, and everything like that up in Edmonton at the U of A. And my children are now, as a father, all I ever wanted them to do was stand on their own 2 feet and carry their own crap in this life. And they're doing it. And I couldn't be prouder. And
that's very nice.
But I see today's world, with all of this technology, it's like your other callers were saying, it's taken away from those little jobs that they could do when they were younger to learn a work ethic. My brother and I grew up on a farm in Saskatchewan, and my brother and I used to take the old lawn boy. I don't know if you remember, but it was the old lawn boy lawnmower that you had to wrap the rope around to start it and mix the gas. And we would push
maybe
it,
a little before my time, Wade, but okay.
And cut people's grass.
Right.
Sorry,
right.
That's it.
So So your children are how old? Your children? They're
40
late 30s,
and 37.
40s. 40 and 37, and you have some grandchildren, you said.
Yep.
Okay. How would you measure the prospects for your grandchildren? Do you think they're going to have a similar quality of life?
As their parents, you mean?
Yeah, as their parents?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Okay.
No, unless something changes, we need to, I think we need to encourage them to get into the trades, we need to
some people
get
are bringing
the tyrant to stop trying to destroy this province at least, and maximize our resources and put these children to work in a trade.
Okay. All right, Wade. Look, thank you. Thank you for calling. Great story there. We'll go to Bradley in Halifax, but we have to stop first, Bradley. Just hang on. Won't be too long. I'm Rob Snow. We're talking about generational fairness today on Talkback on Wednesday. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We have been talking about generational fairness today, and the idea older generations will enjoy a higher standard of living than the generations coming behind them. Bradley in Halifax. Hi, Bradley. What would you say, Bradley? What's your opinion here today?
A lot of people have been talking about ambitions and people want, but I think it's more about people our generation, because I'm 26 years old, people want too much too soon in life.
Okay.
My thing is a lot of people that I know, they have within the last 4 years, they have a brand new ATV or side-by-side. Did you have one of those when you grew up?
I did not, no.
Did you ever spend $2,500 a month on your car?
$2,500 a month on a car? No, I bought cars for cheaper than $2,500. Whole cars.
Exactly. Your first house, was it when you went to go look at it? Was it 2,500 square feet or better with granite countertops?
No, nothing like that. No,
nothing like that. But a lot of people my generation, that's what they want. But that's not what we need. What we need is to be able to get through through your 20s, be able to build up a small nest egg, and then when you get to your 30s, be able to purchase a house, be able to purchase other things. But if we want all that in our 20s, by the time we get to our 30s, we are sitting with a $1,500 a month in between your side-by-side, your car, your everything else. So you don't have enough money to buy a house. No, you don't have enough money to spend it on your actual needs because you've spent them on all your wants.
Okay. So you think tastes for younger people are simply too extravagant? Their desires are too extravagant. Is that what you're saying, Bradley?
Yeah, and they're spending all their money on their monthly payments. If you look at the SPS 500 for the last 4 years, if they would have saved their CERB money, it went up 100% in the last 4 years. So if they would have saved that $8,000 they would have got, in today's dollar amount, they would have had $16,000. They wasted it on whatever they wasted it on. Now they could have $16,000, which in Nova Scotia is a good down payment on a house.
Yeah. Okay. Very good points. Did you ever buy that place you were looking at, Bradley?
No, I've gone a different angle.
Got a different angle. Okay. Bradley's always got an angle when he calls. Thank you for your opinion, though. Great to hear from you again today, Bradley. Wow, that hour flew by. Another full hour ahead. Generational fairness. We'll talk about this a little bit more with your help and your phone calls. Right after the news, the latest breaking news. Lots of news today to tell you about. Coming right up here on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
and have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Talk Back. We've been talking about generational fairness today and this idea that older generations will have a better quality of life than the younger generations coming behind them. Do you think it's true? If you think it's true, what can be done to fix it? If you don't think it's true, what makes you believe that? 1-833-668-2577. Let's get right back to our phone lines. Eric in Halifax. Thanks for waiting there, Eric. Are you there?
Yeah,
Eric?
how are you doing today, Rob?
I'm good, Eric. Thank you for calling. What would you say, Eric?
Well, I would say,
Eric,
like
hello
I said
there.
to David there, I looked up fairness in the New Webster Dictionary, and it says clear, free from fault. What I mean by that is we control our own destiny, whether we're young or old. I mean, we have to play the cards we've been dealt with. Because, I mean, I'm 75 years old. I think I've been treated fairly well. But I'm just, like I just finished saying, I'm going to go with my heart. And that's the way I'm going to be fair. I don't need any help from the government or anything like that. Because, like I just said, I personally, and I can't speak for the other people in Canada, but play the cards you've been dealt with and control your own destiny, and you'll be all right.
All right, Eric. Thank you so much for your call, and thank you for waiting there. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. A few things kind of inspired this topic today, just things I've been reading in the news media. For example, there was an item in the Financial Post a few days ago, and it was about this transfer of wealth that is going to happen as baby boomers pass along whatever wealth they have accumulated. They pass that along to their children, their grandchildren. And the trend is boomers aren't waiting until they die because they want to help their children now. They see their children are struggling. They don't want to wait. They want to help them in the here and now. They want to help their children get a head start in life, whether that's by helping them put a down payment on a home or whatnot. And it's a big number that boomers are going to pass along. The estimate is $1 trillion that will be transferred from older generations to younger generations. And the theme of the item in the Financial Post was that this early transfer of wealth, this trend that is happening, this idea that boomers aren't waiting until they die to do this, it is a sign now of how dysfunctional things have become, how generationally unfair things have become. And again, like other news reports, it cites this CIBC report. We've talked about this a few times about parents who are gifting large sums of money to their children to help them get a foothold in the housing market. The average gift being $115,000 $100,000. And it's even more in places like Toronto and Vancouver. In Toronto, it's more than $200,000. This item in the Financial Post quoted this person, Paul Kershaw. We've talked about him before, the BC professor, the founder of Generation Squeeze. He's the person who's been advocating for a capital gains tax on the sale of your home. And he makes a lot of claims about older generations and how much easier it was for the boomers compared to the younger generations of today. He says older generations didn't need as much education to secure a job. And if they went to post-secondary, college, university, that education wasn't as costly as it is now. And he says wages were more likely to cover the cost of housing than they do today. And I thought, okay, that's fair enough. And then he pointed to all the money that the government spends on retirees and how that money far outspends whatever money the government spends helping young people to get a head start in life. He notes that OAS, the Old Age Security Program, payments from that program are going to hit $100 billion a year by the year 2028-2029. And that it will be almost 20% of federal program spending. That surpasses spending for EI is $26 billion a year. The Canada Child Benefit, $27 billion a year, and they're more likely to benefit young people. He said affluent Canadians, older Canadians need to consider whether more federal spending can be allocated toward investments in things like housing or childcare or post-secondary education. Basically, take from the old, give to the young. So that item in the Financial Post, it prompted a letter to the editor in our local newspaper in Ottawa, the Ottawa Citizen, that said, don't blame boomers for the millennials' plight. That was the headline. And the letter writer points out baby boomers were the most educated generation in history when they were coming of age, with unprecedented numbers, not only finishing high school, but also completing post-secondary education, also the biggest generation in history, meaning that great numbers were competing for a much smaller number of jobs. No one was simply handing out great jobs and down payments on dream homes. The letter writer also pointed out in the early 80s, many were embarking on an adult life. A mortgage might easily be in the 10% range. She says she renewed hers at 19.75% for mortgage rate. 19.75%. You imagine a mortgage rate like that, David? 19.75%? That's eye-popping. And the letter writer suggests the big difference these days between the older generations and younger generations is easier access to credit. For many boomers, lifestyle, such as it was fueled by money in the bank. Today's young adults have easy access to credit, which in many cases is funding lifestyle choices their boomer parents never dreamed of, which is keeping them from home ownership. Easy credit has taught them to deny themselves nothing in the moment rather than plan for the future. Don't paint boomers as the bad guys. We worked, we saved, and we planned. End quote. Signed Sharon in Canada, Ontario. That's kind of Bradley's point just before the news. Right? What do you think about that? Is there any truth to that? 1-833-668-2577. In Calgary, John, thanks for calling, John. Hi there.
Hey, how's it going?
It goes, sir. With or without me, it goes. Thank you. What's up?
Sure does.
Well, what's your opinion here?
My opinion, my kids are going to have a heck of a time trying to make ends meet. Like it's okay. I think it's like corporations, like fine, even provincial. Like education is one thing. Wife and I and our in-laws have been paying for a future education fund for both our kids. So at least we're trying to set them up, get them educated, and get a better job. But like with corporations and insurance rates. Like when I first moved to Calgary back in 2000, I was 20 years old. I could not afford to get a car because of insurance. Anybody under 25, you paid an arm and a leg above everybody else because, we're young. But I only had one speeding ticket in my whole 45 years of driving right now. And, 35 years of driving. And it's going to be like tuition rates are keep on rising. There's no caps on anything anymore. Companies are just making it hand over fist. There's no trickle-down effect. It's just everything is getting more costly. And like you said, like the other report there, that the boomers, there were jobs everywhere. Nowadays, it's hard jobs. You can get a job, but you're still not going to be making enough to pay your rent. How can you save for something if your rent is twice as much as a mortgage? Like, there's no way kids are going to make it down the road. It's just going to get worse unless government helps out. But then it has its side effects to that, the downfalls of all that as well. But it's just, nowadays, everything's just getting tougher. And like the wife and I, a couple of weeks ago, figured out if we didn't buy our house back in 2006, we locked in on a house. He was moving back out east. He dropped it $20,000. That $20,000 is what gave us the chance to buy a house. If we didn't get that, we'd still be renting right now, probably.
Wow. Okay. All right, John. Thank you. Thank you.
You're
Doesn't
welcome.
envy the younger generation coming up right now. What's your opinion here, folks? 1-833-668-2577. Be right back. Wednesday, Talk Back here on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
I just have to, and David, please feel free to jump in here. Please. There is a developing story in Ontario politics where there's been all kinds of speculation in Ontario. Doug Ford is going to pull the plug early and call an early election. That's not the breaking news. We're not going to an election in Ontario. But the Toronto Star is reporting that Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, will announce a plan to send 16 million Ontarians checks in the mail to offset the rising cost of living. Amid early speculation, sources say the Premier's gamut will be announced in the Finance Minister's fall economic statement at the end of the month. The precise amount of the rebate checks is still being finalized, but it could be at least $200 for every adult and child in the province, costing the Treasury $3.2 billion. When it is expected to flow out the door sometime in January or February, the payments would be tax-free. Tax-free. So, David, Doug Bucks coming your way, or Ford Bucks coming your way. David, yes.
So blessed, Rob. I'm feeling so blessed.
Yeah,
so lucky.
I know. There's carbon tax rebate. What do you need Doug Bucks for? Yeah. Two people in your house, you're going to get $400 tax-free, courtesy of Doug Ford. You probably get a payment in February. There's going to be an election in March. Isn't that something? Oh, my gosh.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Doug. That's great. Good stuff.
Helping David with the generational fairness. That's our topic for the Talk Back today. Let's go to Grant in Calgary. Hi, Grant.
Hi.
Hi, Grant. Great to hear from you. Yeah, I hear you, Grant. Me? Go ahead. Yeah, I hear you just fine, Grant.
A thought on it. I just recently retired, and I moved out to Natin because the cost of living in Calgary was like to be able to continue paying a mortgage or be mortgage free. I moved to a small town outside of Calgary. My wife still commutes. I don't know how it would be physically possible for anybody who has a job in the service industry or maybe even the construction industry, how they would possibly be able to get a mortgage. You know, the not only is a mortgage in Calgary for a house maybe $500,000 or $600,000, but then you have all these government organizations, CMHC, New Home Warranty, insurance you need for the homes. Before you even look at buying a home, you're just in so far in the hole. It's just ridiculous. I've got a 24-year-old daughter who has a full-time job. She makes about $19 and she's paying $1,500 of rent for a one-bedroom. Like it's a cookie cutter suite. You would think you were living in China or something. It was so small. After she's paid for that and a bit of food, she's got no money left. So
wow. Okay.
So I don't get it. Like she doesn't have.
Well, I mean, for the current government, for the current federal government, and one of their solutions, it semes to me to higher housing costs and why not, is to have 30-year mortgages instead of 25 to lower those payments. I mean, that's one of the ideas they have anyway.
Yeah, I don't see how that benefits anybody. It just, the only person that benefits is the bank, right? You're just paying less money on the principal. I think the whole the whole premise goes back to the fact that the government's spending too much money. You know, it's raised the cost of gas, it raised the cost of food, it's raised the cost of rent, and then there's people like my friends who buy properties and subdivide them into duplexes or basement suites, and all they talk about is that the government only allows them to raise their rent 4% or something every month. So that type of thing is where the people in the upper middle class who can afford to buy an extra home aren't doing it for anything. Like, they have no moral conscience at all. They don't realize that by raising the rent, you know, every single year or every time a new tenant comes in, they actually hope that they force the other tenants out so they can pump the rent up 15 or 20%. And so that generational gap, you know, where the people making $150,000 or more a year who can afford to have a second mortgage by buying another property, just makes it devastating for the first-time home buyers, people trying to get into a place at a reasonable valuation. It's hard to even call those people friends anymore, honestly.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, Grant, thank you. Thank you for calling and sharing your opinions as we talk about generational fairness today. In hour number 2 of Talkback, I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Generational fairness has been the topic of the day, and the idea older generations will have a better quality of life than the younger generations coming behind them. It's been far from unanimous one way or the other, whether people think that's true or not true. I'd love your opinion here. 1-833-668-2577 to Mark in Calgary. Thanks for waiting, Mark. Go ahead, Mark.
How you doing, buddy?
Good, Mark. Thank you.
Good. Hey, so I'm calling you from the middle of the pack. I don't know how many late 30-year-olds are calling your show to give their opinion. I know that there's been quite a few people on the tail end of their working life, or they're looking at retirement, or they've been in the workforce for quite a few years. I'm in my late 30s, kind of looking at the sliding into the back nine here pretty quick. But it's really interesting to see the difference between what my parents went through, because my old man and I, like, he's 30 years older than me, but my old man and I, we're really good buddies. We get along great. We talk a lot about what it was like for him growing up. He likes to see what it's like for me and my family growing up. And me and my wife and I started, we have just outside of Calgary. We own our own home. And for us, it was a little bit challenging to get a house, 10, 15 years ago. It was difficult. But I also look at the generation of kids now, like the 19 and the 20-year-olds, trying to come up with the world the way that it is, and there is no possible way that you can compare the two between what my parents went through, who are retired, versus what they're going through now. Interest rates are, for everything, is just incredibly higher. I realize that the housing market, their interest rates for a mortgage is slashed by a lot, but the price of houses have gone up an incredible amount. There's no way that these kids can afford it. On the flip side, these kids have access to, like you said about 10, 15 minutes ago, they have access to credit that no one's ever seen before up to this point, where if you want something but you don't have the money for it, you just slap a piece of plastic down on the debit machine and you can buy whatever it is that you want. I know kids that they just cannot afford to own their own home. They're renting at $2,000 a month, yet they're in Mexico or in Hawaii twice a year. And it's like, man, if you were just to cut that nonsense out for just long enough, you could probably save up a down payment, and then you'd be able to not be stuck in the renter's market. So I think there is a huge difference between the generation that came before me and the generation that's coming after, and I'm watching it getting worse.
Okay. Thank you, Mark, for your call. Really appreciate it. We'll be right back. Rob Snow. Talk back here on News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Generational fairness, that's our topic of the day. Big political issue right now. I mean, let's face it. Young Canadians cast their vote for the Liberals in big numbers back in 2015. They liked whatever Justin Trudeau was pitching at the time, whether it was legalizing marijuana. The anniversary of that is tomorrow, by the way. Happy anniversary. They liked the idea that he wasn't afraid to run deficits. He talked about growing the economy from the heart out. He took climate change seriously. He was young. People thought he was handsome, young family, glamorous wife, famous last name. And now all those voters are 10 years old. And I guess they feel that he hasn't delivered for them. And if anything, things have become worse during the Liberals' time in office. What's crazy is that should be a dream scenario for the New Democrats, but they're not benefiting at all. The Democrats they're having a hard time raising money. They're not polling well, not election ready. And the big winner in all of this has been the Conservative Party, because Pierre Poilievre seems to have tapped into these frustrations. You know, how many times you've ever heard him talk about, the doubling of rent and the doubling of mortgage payments and the 30-somethings living at home in their parents' basements and work doesn't pay anymore and all this stuff. But is there any truth to all of it? Chris in Calgary. Hi, Chris. Thanks for calling. What's your opinion here?
Yeah, well, I have two opinions. One, youngsters or the new generations of today have more access to everything. Their healthcare is far better than we had it 40 years ago. Their technology is right at your fingertips. You don't need to read a roadmap anymore.
True.
Things are pretty nice for them. But at the same time, is they cannot afford the luxuries that we used to have. And I think part of it is government and corporations have caught on to the dual income. Back in the 80s, you could have a one-income family and still take a vacation, and I think they've increased the amount or the cost of all the goods and services that we get now to accommodate for a two-income scenario. As a 50-year-old person, I need a roommate to live or a wife to live, another income coming in, because it's simply too expensive to live on your own anymore. So I really I don't envy the next generation. Things have quadrupled in cost.
Yeah. So you think they will have a lower standard of living than the generations before them? Say Gen Z, whatever?
It all depends on what you equate the quality of life to. I think they're going to have better health. They're eating better. They're all this technology and information right at their fingerprints. But
sure.
Affording, there's a lot of people who still can't afford internet. So having
money in the bank
is harder.
Retirement security, those sorts of things. That's what I'm talking about.
Those things are, I think, very, very hard for the next generation.
Very, very hard.
I don't know how to solve that, but it's not just the government. I think it's corporations have their fingers in that pot as well.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Thank you, Chris. Great to hear from you. To Neil up next, also in Calgary. Thank you, Neil, for calling. What's your opinion here, Neil?
I'm currently trying to sell a house, and it's an older detached home, and it's been a real education for me on the home buyers today.
Okay.
So yeah, my house is selling for less than the average price for a single detached home, but a multi, like a duplex or a townhouse, actually sells for $150K to $200K more than a single detached home here, but they're brand new. It's not an older home. So the real estate agents warned me when I put it up for sale that it's going to be difficult to sell a home like this, because the expectations of the younger generation today is to have a house with very little maintenance, small yard, not a whole lot to do.
So what's working against your home then? What's working against your home that it's not meeting buyers' expectations?
It's an older house. It's
what does it need?
It has a larger yard, and it has maintenance to do. Now, I've never bought a home that didn't need maintenance, but I don't really know what a maintenance-free home is. But
I don't know what a maintenance-free home is. I'd love to buy that house. Yeah, I've never lived in one of those myself. But
that's
if we lived in maintenance-free homes, we wouldn't need Home Depot. So
that's right. Yeah,
right. I wouldn't be going to Canadian Tire every weekend.
Yeah, so my target market for this house is people that are in their 40s or 50s. Myself, I'm 62, so I've, I don't know whether I'm part of the baby boomers or at the end of the baby boom or something. But anyways, we call ourselves Gen W. But
Gen W, okay, all right.
But
that works.
Yeah, but the thing is the younger buyers are actually, if they buy an older single detached home, they want it completely gutted inside and made brand new. Which this house has been gutted 15 or 20 years ago, but it's not. It wasn't up to.
It's not in the style of the day, I guess you could say, right?
Yeah, and there's no compromise with that group. It's I want what I want, and I'm willing to compromise on the size of lot and the size of house just to get something that's brand new instead of used, which I've come to realize. So any little thing that they notice is a complaint when they walk through the home, because I get this feedback from the realtors is, well, the kitchen isn't brand new, the flooring isn't brand new, the doors need to be replaced. And it's like, well, yeah, we replaced the doors 10 years ago. What, do you have to replace the doors every 5 or 10 years?
It opens, it closes, it keeps the cold out, right? Well, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a little bit befuddling to me how
isn't that interesting?
And I have 4 adult children that are in their 20s and 30s. And I ask them all the time, and they say, yeah, we don't have time to do any house maintenance, and besides, we don't really know how to do it, and and we just want to move into a brand new home, but we don't have enough money for a brand new home, and could we lend them money to buy a house? And it's like, well, yeah, like we grew up in the same sort of situation. We didn't have money for a home, and but my wife and I have been fortunate in having, above average incomes, and we have been able to afford homes, but otherwise we would be renting, I would guess. But anyways,
the
expectation, I think, is just above and beyond what our generation was. We were willing to compromise for a smaller home and all of that. So.
Right. Okay, Neil, I'm going to let you go. You go answer your phone. I'll run too, okay? Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
okay. This is the Talkback Hour. Yeah, I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know, and this is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Bodie in Guelph up next on the whole issue of generational fairness. Hi, Bodie in Guelph. How are you? Good to hear from you.
How are you?
Just great. Thank you. What's your opinion here, Bodie?
Well, I mean, it's kind of, for me, I think everybody's right to a sense. I mean, I'm 22, and
okay.
22? I see it from the point where jobs don't pay what they used to, but most of my friends don't budget the way they probably should. I'm the only person in my friend group that owns a car, and there's about 6 or 7 of us because people they spend their money on junk. I mean, I know guys that work full-time jobs, and every week every day they're eating out, and then they're going on trips, and they're going to this place and that place. So I think to an extent that is the problem. But then when I talk to older people in my family, I talk to my aunt, she told me when she started working at Zehrs in 1974, she made $8 an hour. And if you go on the Bank of Canada's inflation calculator, that's $48 an hour today.
To work where?
At Zehrs, stocking shelves.
Oh, okay, like a department store kind of thing.
Yeah, like a grocery store, yeah.
Grocery store, okay,
yeah.
All right, okay.
So when you look at it from that sense...
$48 an hour, it equates to $48 an hour to work at a grocery store, wow.
Well, that's what I mean, right? And you look at, that was 1974. 50 years ago, they paid $8 an hour. 50 years later, they're paying a little over double that. They're paying $16.50, or I think minimum wage went to $17 now.
Yeah, 17 and change, I think, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that there was more opportunity in the past, but then there's also not that sort of mentality of, oh, well, if I don't take this $3,000 trip, I could buy a car. There's not really that sort of thinking ahead or thinking what I should do, what would be better off in my own interests. Because when I bought my car, I could drive to another city and make more money. I was driving about 20 minutes out of town to make $26 an hour. So if you have that mentality, there are jobs that do pay more, but it's just people, I don't know if it's people are on their phones all the time seeing ads and being manipulated into buying junk, or they're just spending money for the sake of spending money, but I think that's more so what it is. It's there's less money to be made, right. And when people do get money, they instantly spend it. They don't think twice about it.
I almost wonder, the old saying used to be everybody wants to keep up with the Joneses. If the Joneses had this, then we want this too. I wonder if that's been replaced now with this whole idea of FOMO, that fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out, yeah. No, I think you're dead on.
Maybe that's the new keeping up with the Joneses is the fear of missing out.
I think, yeah.
Well, my friend went to Vegas and he said he had a great time, so I want to go to Vegas and have the Vegas experience too. Or my friends went on a cruise and had a great time. I want to go on a cruise too. My friend has an ATV or a boat or whatever, so I need to have that too, kind of thing.
I think that's exactly what it is, especially with, the new iPhone comes out every year and everybody flocks to the store and they're paying $2,000 for a phone.
Right.
Or this comes out, or, $500 for headphones, $300 on a pair of shoes. And I think that's what it is. If they see one person that has it and everybody thinks, oh, well, I should have that too. And then you see, people on all these actors and musicians, they have all these nice things. But you also have to remember, I watch a lot of old movies and TV shows, and the old shows I watched, they included a lot of the old advertisements, and one of them was, it said, the typical American life is striving towards the ideal. And that always kind of stuck in my head, because if you think of what the ideal is, it's just being well off. It's not having a sports car and, a phone and the most expensive everything. It's just having enough to be comfortable. And when you look at all these people that do have money, I worked for a guy that owned 23 houses, and he drove this 20-year-old beat-down pickup truck. And he wore jeans with holes in them, and I flat out asked him one day, I said, you obviously have money for nicer things. Why don't you, why are you driving this old truck? And,
Right.
And he said, I just don't care. He said, I'd rather put the money into a house and keep the money growing. And he said, I'll be able to retire in a few years. And he was only 40-something at the time. I'm going to be retired very comfortably. He said, I don't care about a phone. The car still drives. He said, yeah, my clothes aren't nice, but he didn't care.
Isn't that
he said, I'd rather look at the money in the bank than, a nice suit on my body, whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think
expectations, unrealistic expectations. That the feeling that I want this and I want it right now. It is. I'm not going to say it's the prevailing theme that's come through today, but it's certainly been It's been a common opinion that's been expressed, and I thank you, Bodie, for your call as well. We'll take one more, but we'll have to wait until we come back and wrap things up on a Wednesday. Talk back on generational fairness. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talk Back on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Generational fairness. We've been talking about that for the last 2 hours. I've loved the discussion. I've loved your opinions. Let's get one more from Stephen in Calgary. Hi, Stephen.
Hey, how are you doing, Rob?
I'm good, Stephen. Thanks for waiting, Stephen.
No problem at all. I just wanted to say that the amount of opinions I have on this topic, I could probably take over the next 2 hours for you. So if you need some coverage, let me know.
Okay.
I just wanted to respond to Grant, who had talked about the landlords and kind of being upset at basically the situation his daughter's in and where he sees the housing crisis in Canada. But
he thinks it's greed. There's greed at work. Yeah,
I recently left the restaurant industry. I'm now into the new home building industry. At this point, I'm making a very, very low income, but just starting out. I have 2 rental properties, and I know a lot of people who do have 1 or 2 rental properties. And the one thing, I think there's a huge misconception about landlords, increasing rent to make profit. But I'm telling you, for somebody who's been doing this for a while, most of us do not make a profit. It's usually a little bit of a loss, potentially a break even. That'd be great. If there is an income, it's very, very small, and it's getting taxed along with the principal that we're paying our mortgage by the government. So
why do it?
Pardon me.
So why are you doing it? So why do it then? If it's not a money maker?
It's a long-term game. It's a long-term investment. Why do you put in for RSPs? Because you're hoping for a good return down the road. And that's really what it is, because nowadays, I agree, housing prices are absolutely incredible. And we have one group responsible for this, and that's the government. They have set this up for years and years and years, and that's why we're at such a ridiculously high housing price compared to what we're all making for income. And it's the way that the government has set it up that, people like us, maybe the younger generation, we're just trying to do something. How do we get ahead? What's going to happen down the road? And I worry that the Canadian dream in some aspects is maybe slowly dying. Opening a business, becoming middle class, that's going to be harder and harder with these huge corporations taking over.
Okay. So on this idea, let's wrap up on this point. It's kind of been the question all these last 2 hours. Do you think younger generations will enjoy the same quality of life as older generations? What would you say to that?
It's going to be different way of living.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe house ownership and huge, lots and, big backyards might not be a thing of the future. I think every generation will adapt, right? You talk to my grandfather and he lived a heck of a lot harder than I do. So we'll adapt and we'll get through it. We really will. But we need some people in government that know how to slow things down and make sure that, everyone can have an equal right to achieve their dream, whatever it is, home ownership, traveling around the world, whatever.
Okay. All right, Stephen, you give me hope for the future. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Appreciate all your calls today. Great discussion about that topic. Not the last time we'll have that talk, I think. Look, it's been a very busy news day already. There's lots to bring you right up to date on. We'll do that at the top of the hour. Talk Back is back tomorrow. New topics, more calls. You're on News Radio.